Fear leads to anger, anger to hate, and hate into suffering. This is something that doesn't just happen in Star Wars, this is something that happens in our own lives. We may not recognize it, but the description of how one falls to the dark side is actually a representation of our own negative thought patterns and self-sabotage. Too often we go from annoyed to irritated to angry, and this all culminates in increasing our own suffering. In this video, we're going to break that idea down and figure out how we can combat this corrosive thought process in our own lives. Currently, I'm finishing up my last semester of grad school to become a therapist, and in addition to having a passion for mental health, I also grew up loving Star Wars. This video is where those two paths meet, and we get to see an important lesson from how someone falls to the dark side. Fear. This is the beginning of the descent into the dark side. But what do we mean by fear? Fear is an emotional response to things that scare us or threaten us, or more accurately, things that we feel threatened by. We might feel threatened by many things in our life, like running into an alligator when walking. But for this video, I want to focus on a specific type of fear or anxiety that comes from approaching the unknown, specifically in the realm of self-development or improving our lives in some way. Fear is one approach to things that we do not yet understand. And when we don't understand something or feel like we don't have control over something or an aspect of our lives, this can create a lot of discomfort in us. And this fear can very easily turn into anger, which really is just a defense mechanism to protect ourselves from this unknown. This may be especially true when this fear or anxiety results from someone or something challenging a piece of our identity and presenting a challenge to us. This is often an unconscious process, which is why in order to combat it, we first need to understand it. Discomfort is the natural response to fear or anxiety because anxiety presents itself as a problem that wants to be solved, which is a good thing because if we never focused on solving this anxiety in the past, we would have gotten eaten by saber-toothed tigers or never learned how to build effective huts to protect ourselves. However, when we try to solve this anxiety nowadays, we often go in the wrong direction and try to solve it with replacing it with a different emotion that's not so helpful. Instead of combating our anxieties by finding out the root of it and figuring out what is actually making us anxious or fearful in a certain situation, it's much easier to replace the anxiety with anger. By being angry at something, we can feel like we are rejecting the anxiety and solving the problem that anxiety presents in a false way. When presented with a new challenge or an unfamiliar path in our own self-development, we can often feel fearful due to this unknown. For example, if we've never been to the gym, it makes sense that the gym would scare us. It's unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of anxieties that may come around, but this can ultimately manifest in anger because we may just flat out reject the idea of the gym or of being healthy and trying to pursue self-improvement in our own lives. But instead of taking a step back and approaching this anxiety and saying, it makes sense that I'm nervous about the gym because I've never been, oftentimes we just angrily reject it because it's easier to just push the whole idea away and say, well, health is just a scam, or who needs to be healthy anyway, or people who go to the gym are just obsessed with their own appearance. What often happens is this sense of fear or anxiety can be triggered by people who have approached the same unknown and conquered and come out with a different solution than us. It can bring out our own insecurities because we don't understand how they got there. What often happens is this fear or anxiety is triggered within us and we get angry when we see people who have conquered the unknown with a better solution than anger. We don't really understand it, so then it brings out fear or anxiety within us because we don't know it. This might look like seeing someone or something that may be a step or two ahead of us in some area of life and just feeling a sense of anger and rejection towards them. Maybe we see someone who's starting to be a successful entrepreneur and we just look at them and say, they just got lucky, or oh, it's a scam anyways. And we feel this sense of anger or rejection that comes out from us because we're really just projecting our own insecurities. It's much easier to be angry in a situation like this instead of doing something productive with the insecurity because the anger is a much more natural emotional response that lets us just reject the whole idea of improvement instead of putting in any sort of hard work. Anger is a way to engage with the thought or feeling on a surface level without doing anything productive with it. By being angry at something, we're often able to protect the sense of self that we have created that justifies our inaction or bad actions. In general, we use anger to push things away from ourselves, which can be helpful and healthy in the right context to utilize anger. But oftentimes our anger is actually just an escape that helps us from avoiding confronting the reality of our own insecurities, such as holding dogmatic blanket statement views like all people with money are evil or fitness and health is stupid. We push away having to deal with our own financial or health related insecurities. And when all of this anger is constantly directed at people or ideas, this anger turns into hate. Hatred is the intensified culmination of a lot of anger. To reach the hate level in this process, the anger has to have gone unchallenged and unchecked for a while. Hate is especially corrosive because it goes past the threshold of any reality. Let me ask you something. What does hate feel like? When you think of something you hate, what is going on inside your body? You might feel a tightness and tenseness, maybe even a shortness of breath. Maybe you feel really fixated on this thought or idea where your mind feels both really crowded and anxious and angry, but also like there's nothing going on in it at the same time. Hatred, in essence, is the overwhelming feeling we get when our anger has gone past the tipping point. And our hatred only grows the more attention that we give to it and the more we feed into it. And at the end of the day, the person who embraces this unjustified hate is also the person who is suffering. The suffering is a combination of constantly dwelling on these corrosive negative emotions in tandem with you never actually doing anything about them. When we dwell on them, the anger, fear, and hatred that comes from it takes away our time, our focus, and our access to positive emotional states. And this suffering is often our own doing because we decide to dwell on this negative emotionality instead of addressing our insecurities in a real and meaningful way. The cycle of fear to anger to hatred and ultimately to suffering is so powerful because we get a false sense of problem solving from it. On some level, we feel that by obsessively engaging with our fear or anger that we're somehow going to solve it. But the truth is, because we're not actually addressing the root of these emotions or root of the insecurities, we just keep diving deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole of this thought emotion spiral. Oftentimes, these are emotions that's almost wearing the clothing of thoughts, and we think we're really thinking through issues when in reality, we're just feeling the emotionality in the moment. We feel like we're going to solve the issue at hand because engaging with something is how we solve it. But just leaning into the emotions without actually understanding them is just mimicking the problem-solving process. And I'm not saying not to feel your emotions. In fact, it's very important to recognize and oftentimes experience your emotions. But we should use these emotions as a tool rather than a law that dictates our actions, beliefs, and reality. We should understand the root causes of these negative emotions and try to confront them. We use our emotions as a tool rather than a master. We master ourselves rather than letting our emotions master us. If we are approached by fear or anger at people or things that give us feelings of insecurity, then we have to be real with ourselves and ask ourselves why we're feeling that way. Maybe our anxieties are justified, or maybe the feeling of fear and anger is really just trying to cover up our own insecurities. And if it is an insecurity, we have to figure out what type of insecurity it is. If it's something that we can change, then we come up with a plan and move forward towards improvement. And if it is something that we cannot change, then we have to learn to approach ourselves with a sense of radical acceptance and move forward and live in peace with these pieces of ourselves. If you found this valuable, let me know in the comments, like and subscribe for more content like this, and remember to hit life on all cylinders.